Thank you, Eric. You all keep eating. I'll talk loud and try to get over the top of your chewing, if that's okay. And do help yourself for seconds. We're going to try to make up some time, keep you on time today. That's very important for all of us here. I know we're all busy. Many of you are all away from your farms and have traveled to get here. So with the weather like it is, we want to make sure we don't run long and cause you to be late. Norbert there's got to go all the way back to Illinois, and I'm sure there's others are, and I'll follow him across. I've been out now for about 7 days, I think, or 8, and I'm heading home right after my presentation. I apologize, but my sister-in-law is, my wife started, 25 years ago, started a domestic violence center in our hometown. My sister-in-law, her sister now, helps fundraise for it and is a big part of it. They have an event tonight, and I'm going to try to catch the tail end of it. I'm gone from home a lot, but as a family, we try to support each other's goals and the things we're doing, and I want to try to get back home to do that. So I apologize to you all that I won't be hanging around to the end of this. I'm Joe Maxwell. I'm a family farmer. I'm a fourth-generation family farmer from the state of Missouri. On our farm, I always tell the truth. My brother and I have been farming now most all our lives. I'll tell you a little bit. I started paying taxes in 1978, graduated high school in 75, had a little short time in the Army, and then on to the National Guard. And so about 78 is when my brother and I kind of consider we started farming. The reason we started at the same time is because we're twins. So my twin brother's actually American family farmer. I'm the guy that just kind of run around. And I was telling some of you all earlier, I get home and he says, "Now, Joe," he said, "are you going to be here today?" And I'll say, "Yeah." And he said, "Are you sure?" And I say, "Yeah, I'm going to be there." And he leaves me a little list of, it's kind of like honeydew items, you know, because he doesn't trust me to take on any real big tasks. So it's things he thinks I can get done in a short period of time. And usually like, tearing out the fence or cleaning the hog barn. He's the farmer. I get to do this. He's been a great partner on the farm and allows me to do this. He's as committed to this as I am. He's a former board member of Missouri's Farmers Union. I'm a lifetime member of the Missouri Farmers Union. We are big Farmers Union supporters. Today, I want to speak a little bit about the Organization for Competitive Markets. I'm the executive director for OCM. And I'm also the president of a newly launched C4 that is called Family Farm Action. We did work with Roger Johnson on our announcement day. Roger's quoted in the press release, and I'll explain a little bit more about that on why we took the action to form another group. Fourth generation family farmer. I tried to explain this to some folks, so some of you in this room will get this. My great-grandfather bought the farm. My brother lives on a homestead. Now, it's not the original homestead house, because 1 year after Grandma and Grandpa got married, Grandma said it was an accident, but the fact is, there was a curtain that got too close to a candle and the old house burnt down. Now the family knows Grandma just wanted a new home. But in that home, my dad was born in that house that my brother lives in. My granddad died in that house. My dad passed away 15 feet from where he was born. My family, not unlike many of you in this room, we're America's family farmers. We have helped build the prosperity of this country. That's who we are, and we're a proud people. But today, we're getting screwed. So I want to talk about restoring economic justice for the American family farmer. OCM is a nonprofit organization. We're a national organization. We are a policy, research, and advocacy group. We work with Farmers Union and other organizations around the country providing various services on specific topics, and we focus on the issues of anti-monopoly, concentration, and trade, and trying to restore the justice from a free, open market. Family Farm Action is a new C4. Lillian Salerno is the chair. I'm the president of. It is a C4, 501c4, and it can engage politically. 501c3 OCM cannot engage politically. And I know that Tom taught us that we broke apart the Farmers Union in the beginning because it got too partisan politics. But I'm here today to tell you, if we don't put political muscle behind our voice and our advocacy, we're never going to change Washington, D.C. or the state houses. So we came together as an umbrella group. National Sustainable Ag Councils endorsed this, the National Farmers Union. And the reason is because you know this is true. When Big Ag and its candidates have third-party verifiers, like that long list there, these are all the people that give credence to those policymakers and those candidates out there that they are speaking for America's family farmers and pushing the policy. Instead of speaking for them, they're driving the American farmer off the land. And what we see in America right now is there's only one national organization, the National Farmers Union, because it has a PAC that engages on a national level to make change of who's elected. And we decided we needed another group that specifically focused on the competition issue. Trade, competition, breaking up the monopolies that have a stranglehold on our marketplace. So those are the two organizations, and we are going toe to toe out there and winning elections and winning issues against that long list. I just came out of Oklahoma. The Cattlemen's Association, the National Cattle Beef Association, which I will talk about in a minute. And if you're a member, I'm okay with that. I'm a member of groups that I despise most of the things they're doing. But sometimes it's good to belong. But I'm wanting to tell you, and I will show you today how they work against everything we believe in this room. And they decided they wanted to increase the beef checkoff, the beef tax in Oklahoma, and we took them on, and we beat them 55.6% of the vote. We beat them in Missouri, and we beat them in Oklahoma, and Big Ag's been trying to put something in your state constitutions called right to farm. It gives corporations the same rights that individuals have at the same level as freedom of speech, the freedom to bear arms, the freedom of religion, giving corporations the right to farm and have the same type of protection that you have for free speech. I said, be danged. And we took them on in Oklahoma, and we beat them. Every congressional district, we took on Big Ag, we took on the elected officials that are for Big Ag and are pushing multinational corporations take over this food system, and we beat them. So we're winning. And how are we doing it? By coming together and believing and understanding that you got to stand up and you got to speak out and you got to join together. Like Tom was talking about, we got to become a community again. Now, I mentioned I started farming in 1978. That's kind of we all know that as farm kids, we started about the time we could walk. But I say 78 because it's the time I began to pay my own taxes on my farm operation. And this is what's happened to the American farm since I began farming. I am getting a little older, but I ain't that danged old. This is not that long of a period of time. This is the story of the demise of America's family farmers. And it's not by accident that this graph shows this. It was from purposeful policy decisions made by elected officials at the state and federal level. Purposeful actions to ensure the demise of America's family farmers, small businesses, small processors, to disrupt the flow and the lifestyle that built America, our prosperity. We at OCM and Family Farm Action believe that the fundamental value of this country is that everyone should have the opportunity to succeed and keep a piece of the prosperity that is America. If you're a worker and you're punching a time clock somewhere and you build the prosperity of that company and therefore the prosperity of America, then you should have justice and get some of that prosperity, that piece of the prosperity pie left on the table for you. Slaughterhouse workers in America today make half the amount as their manufacturing counterparts. Where's the justice? Where's the American dream? Where's the piece of the prosperity pie for the American farmer? NCBA touts the checkoff program, the commodity checkoff that I'm mandated to pay every time you sell a calf. Every farmer and rancher is mandated to pay. They say its return on investment is $11.21 for the industry. While they were getting $11.21 return on investment on my checkoff money, calf prices dropped in half. Where's my piece as America's family farmer of the prosperity pie? We need to remember that the first Tea Party, when they threw the tea in the water, was a revolt against the government granting the rights of monopoly to one company. Think, why was it tea? Because England granted the East India Tea Company rights to be the only company that got to sell tea in the Americas, bankrupting the merchants, throwing them out of their businesses, and we said, be hanged, and we threw the tea in the water. Today, our government has allowed the same kind of concentration in the market that there are now monopolies controlling our food, overcharging the consumer, and underpaying the farmer, bankrupting rural America. As a good friend of mine says, you lose your farmers, you lose your families. You lose your families, you lose your schools. You lose your schools, you lose your communities. And that's the story of rural America. Here's the concentration. 4 companies in beef control 84% of the market space. 66% of hogs, 59% of poultry. Ag economists will tell you that between 42 and 45% of the CR4, concentration ratio of the 4 largest companies in any market sector, over 42 or 45%, then the fundamentals quit working and you no longer have a fair, free market. And that's where we are today. What's worse is they've carved up this country, the Big Four have, into regions. They no longer compete against each other, and really the farmer or rancher just really has only one company they're selling to, whether that's grain or pigs or whatever. When these numbers are for national, but if you go to southeast U.S., there's a monopoly just controlling that region. Midwest, the West. So really there's just one if you break the country down into regions and areas. And we can only afford to transport our products, especially if you're in livestock, so many hours. So they've got us. What has America's agriculture become as we saw the loss of a family farmers? I guarantee you, I'm a pig farmer. I'm proud to be a pig farmer. Folks that do this to animals call themselves pork producers. I'm no goddamn pork producer. I don't sell pork chops. I sell pigs. My family's been selling pigs for 4 generations, and calves, and raising corn, and soybeans, wheat, and barley. And that worker standing there is paid about minimum wage. That building displaced many family farmers that were purchasing goods and items at the local hardware store that no longer exists. That worker standing there will go into that building, feed those hogs, who can't even move and be paid minimum wage to subsidize multinational corporations. The largest pork producer in the United States is owned by China. Its name is Smithfield. The largest beef producer in the United States is JBS Swift, owned by one of the boys going to the pen because he bribed everybody down in Brazil to get the money to buy out Cargill's pork division. The third largest pork company in the United States is Brazil, JBS. When our policymakers are supporting industrial ag, they're not even supporting American family farmers or businesses. Bob's right, I loved your slides. That's not farming. There's nothing good about good stewardship there for the neighbor, the worker. You know how to smell that poop. Let's get downwind of it. They passed right to farm in Missouri. 0.2%, 2,315 votes out of 1 million is what I lost that election by. And you can't set at the little Corey League Diamond in my hometown in the summertime because it stinks too bad when the boys and girls are trying to play baseball. I want to give you a little quick history lesson. We've been here before, all right? This has happened to this country once before. And we got the heck out of it. So together, we can have a plan. We can restore economic justice for the workers in our communities, for our rural communities, our neighbors, and ourselves as family farmers. There was a guy by the name of Teddy Roosevelt. Now, many of y'all may know trust buster. You know the term trust buster? The original trust buster was Teddy Roosevelt, Republican, was a governor in New York, became president because the president was assassinated. Republicans were trying to shut him up because the guy was running against all the big money. Back then, to become a corporation, you had to get an act of Congress, so the big money people in the U.S., the Mellons and the other big folks, Rockefellers and the others, they formed these trusts to bypass the law. And they had the Whiskey Trust, the Steel Trust, the Packer Trust. And Teddy Roosevelt said, this is hurting the people, it's hurting the consumer, it's killing the farmer. And he said, I'm going to bust up the trust. And he became America's first trust buster. In 1888, I didn't add that up right. That's an older slide. U.S. launches first federal investigation of the meat packing, the Big Four. Swift, which is now JBS Swift. These people don't go away. Armour, Wilson, Morris controlled 45% of U.S. slaughter. They had peaked the amount where the fundamentals didn't work, and Teddy Roosevelt said he was going to bust them up. 1888. 1906. I remember in high school, my teacher made me read the book, The Jungle. Now, I wasn't the best student. I was one of them farm boys that said, why do I need to read The Jungle? I'm going to go out to the farm. But I read it. I got my diploma. I did graduate, as we say around home. But this book has become more and more important to me as I've moved through life. This is what Upton Sinclair said in The Jungle. In the national capital, the Meatpacking Trust had power to prevent inspection of its product and to falsify government reports. In the commercial world, it wiped out thousands of businesses every year. This is in 1906. Does it sound familiar? JBS had rotten meat. They were exporting out of Brazil into 4 countries, to include China. One other one was the U.S. When that report broke, 3 countries immediately shut down the importation of JBS's beef to their country. Guess which one did not? Okay, this is a tough one. There were 4, and 3 said no. That's right, the United States did not shut down for almost 90 days the importation while they cleaned out their rotten meat and fed it to Americans. We falsified government reports, said we're still getting the information on it. Do you know where the head of FSIS, who didn't shut down the ports in the U.S., do you know where he now works? JBS. OCM webpage, we call it USDA Inc. It's just a big revolving door. Upton Sinclair, 1906, they had the same problem. However, farmers came together, started demanding justice, as well as small businessmen and women, and they began to make changes in the law. By 1914, the Clayton Act was passed. That's your first antitrust, anti-monopoly statute on the federal books. In 1920, the Department of Justice broke up those big four packers, and they told them by court order they could no longer own the animal all the way to the pork chop or the beefsteak. They said vertically integrated models will not exist, and you will not have contracts that prevent the market system to work. And in 1920, they agreed and signed a court order, a settlement. 1890, you had the Sherman Act, and then 1914, the Clayton. Packers and Stockyard, 1921. According to NFU, it was titled the Farmers' Bill of Rights, because it gave farmers the right to push back against predatory and retaliatory practices. By the time 1 year before Joe and Steve Maxwell was going to begin to farm, everything looked bright again in America. It took that many years to break up the concentration, to push down the control of the four largest companies in any agricultural sector. And it was at a low point of 20%. Four companies didn't control more than 20% of any sector. I was going to be able to live the American dream and be a prosperous American family farmer. The downward path to today. So what happened? 1981, Ronald Reagan becomes president. This will soon become a bipartisan I'm going to get to Glass-Steagall in a second for you. Every president since Ronald Reagan has led us down a path of concentration and the destruction of our way of life, of our economic opportunity, and our opportunity to have prosperity, our piece of the American dream, our piece of America's prosperity. 1981, Ronald Reagan, by executive order, lifted the 1920 court decree, which allowed the packers to begin to concentrate and vertically integrate their model again. The Reagan administration also changed the definition for what antitrust is. They changed it from competition definition to efficiency, called the efficiency rule. By 1984, this country saw, because of these acts, saw the largest number of acquisitions and mergers in the country's history at that time in the agricultural sector. The minute Reagan lifted that court order and they went to the efficiency rule, he also neutered FTC and Department of Justice because he just didn't fill the slots. There was no one there to enforce what was left of the Clayton and Sherman Acts. One person, no debate, one person unilaterally, in 1968, the guidelines of DOJ to look at an acquisition and merger was general enforcement policy within the overall scheme of the department's antitrust enforcement activity. The primary role of Section 7 enforcement is to preserve and promote market structures conducive to competition. That's how DOJ looked at an acquisition and merger, to ensure competition, because that's what drives America's engine. That's what allows all of us to have economic opportunity and economic justice for everyone. 1982, under the Reagan administration, the deputy of DOJ rewrote that guideline without congressional debate, without executive order, without you even knowing it happened. And they said, although they sometimes harm competition, even though they sometimes harm competition, they always harm competition, but they at least acknowledged that they were going to harm competition. Mergers generally play an important role in a free enterprise, not a fair enterprise, free enterprise economy. This is how they began globalization right here. They can penalize ineffective management and facilitate the efficient flow of investment capital and the redeployment of existing productive assets. That means when they merge, they can lay off thousands of workers. They can lower the wage rate. They can, because there's less competition, they can lower the price they're paying for the inputs, your commodities, and they can increase the price that consumers are paying. 1982. I know where I was that day. I told this, Norbert had me, this is similar to what I spoke at the Illinois Farmers Union. I was driving down I-70 heading to Kansas City, Missouri, and an orange truck, pickup truck. It was the ugliest truck in America, and I owned it. I owned it because it was also the cheapest truck that was on the lot the day I needed a new pickup truck. And I remember hearing this, that this had happened, and I probably may have been the only person in America that shed a tear, because I knew my world was getting ready to change. And by 84, 85, 86, it had. Now, Mr. Clinton. There's a whole bunch on all the presidents. I just don't have time today. And this, to me, is, and Bob's already mentioned it, so I won't dwell on a lot, but this was the last nail in the coffin. This is the straw that broke the camel's back, and Mr. Clinton did it. It is probably why much of rural America didn't vote for Hillary. Because they were Bill was solidly in bed, by this time, in bed with Wall Street, was on his phone with Citicorp. You've got a great slide there. Citicorp had already broke the law on Glass-Steagall and was scampering its butt off to keep from having, I don't know how many dollars, millions of dollars in fines. It needed to fix it. And Bill Clinton, this is all reported, Bill Clinton was on the phone with him and helped push through the repeal of Glass-Steagall. Now, Glass-Steagall was a primary cornerstone of the FDR era to ensure banks didn't get too big to fail. There is some truthfulness in saying that what Obama inherited when he became president was not Bush's fault, but was Clinton's fault. Now, Bush, too, didn't do anything to stop it. He only furthered this momentum, but removing Glass-Steagall was really the way in which banks became too big to fail. What did it do to us? This is what candidate Obama had said about Glass-Steagall. So just in case you don't believe Joe Maxwell, by the time the Glass-Steagall Act was repealed in 1999, the $300 million lobbying effort that drove deregulation was more about facilitating mergers than creating an efficient regulatory framework, Mr. Obama said in a speech on the economy at Cooper Union in New York in March 2008. Instead of establishing a 21st century regulatory framework, we simply dismantled the old one, thereby encouraging a winner-take-all, anything-goes environment that helped foster devastating dislocations in our economy. Net effect. You lost your community banks. You lost access to capital. You lost the relationship-type lending. My savings account at, I don't even remember the name of my bank now, Central Bank of Audrain County, because it's merged and changed hands on it, is number 86. I go in there and say, I want to know how much is in my savings account, 86, and they all look at me. Well, what's the rest of the numbers? I said, my number is 86. And it's 86 because my family had been banking with that original bank for 4 generations, and they didn't change the numbers out when they kept merging. They kept those numbers. I'm 86. But do you think that banker really knows me? No. They send that paperwork up to somebody, and it's all about the numbers at the bottom, and they just assumed there was fewer of you, so they make more money because it takes just as long to review my application for loans and my annual operating agreements. It takes just as long for them to do that as it does somebody farming 10 times as many acres. And they make more money off of them. Here's the inverse slide. The total assets of non-community banks have grown much faster than those of community banks since the early 1990s. Non-community bank growth. Concentration of wealth and power and capital in the hands of a very few, very large banks. So we saw acquisitions and mergers, marketplaces being controlled by fewer and fewer folks, screwing the farmer, screwing the consumer, destroying our environment, caging animals, bankrupting rural America. In 40 years, we've lost 1 million family farmers. Tom, one of the reasons, I don't know if Tom's still here somewhere. No, maybe not. Tom mentioned about, we don't gather as much as we used to. There's one reason there ain't as many of us. There's 1 million fewer of us than when I started farming. Just as a reminder, I put this slide in again. This was the cost. There's other factors. Every president contributed to it. I just gave you those highlights, made it bipartisan. It was, the thing I want you to take away is it was purposeful. It was with purpose that these farmers were driven from the land. It was with purpose that your policymakers at the state level and federal level chose to drive the farmer from the land. They made conscious decisions about who would win and who would lose. In the 80s, our neighbors killed themselves. My cousin shot himself. You probably lost neighbors. Nothing else. They got drove from their land. You watched them cry at the sales. Purposeful decisions by our policymakers drove 1 million farmers from the land. Bankrupted rural economies. They want to know why we're angry out here? You ought to be on OCM boards. John Boyd, he is the president of the Association of Black Farmers in America. Their story is beyond what I just told you. Heck, they couldn't get capital in the beginning. They can't find capital anywhere now. Our organizations that I represent, we believe in economic justice, and I should make this very clear. In America, it is not the color of our skin or the faith in which we believe or the country for which we're from that makes this country great. This country is great because it has one thin thread, the thread of hope, of opportunity to have a piece of the American dream. It's woven together as the social fabric that binds us as a people. Not where we come from, not the color of our skin, not which God we pray to or choose not to. These actions have driven that hope away from every American, and I stand here representing these organizations and say we are driven to ensure every American has the opportunity of economic justice and opportunity that the American dream represents. This is just sectors. I'm 9% left. I'm one of the 9%ers. When I started pig farming, there were 670,000 roughly of us pig farmers in America. Today, there's about 67,000. My brother runs a pig co-op. There's about 100 of us, and we market pigs to the Chipotles and the Whole Foods, and we're still in the pig business, but it's a tough business to be in. Beef cattle, 41% loss. Dairy, 81%. This is Wisconsin. This is a little old, but I love this. I love this. This is, I was working in Wisconsin, and they loosened up their corporate laws for who could own farms, and they weakened their laws so that you could, the environmental laws, so that you could cram more animals into one spot in the dairy industry. This is the Wisconsin State Farmer. This is no liberal rag. The Wisconsin's dairy farm numbers drop in state. This was like 2 years after they gave in to corporate industrial ag. The Wisconsin number of dairy cows continues to hold steady. Yay! The state lost well over 600 dairy farm operations last year. Throw those farmers off the land. I don't know, you all know folks in Wisconsin, them some good folks. Mother Jones asked the question about the same time, are we becoming China's factory farm? In Oregon, they loosened up the laws. There's a mega dairy up in Oregon, and it's to ship way over to China. And they're polluting that beautiful state and driving those small farmers off the land. China now owns Smithfield, largest, they own one in every pig in the country. Or one in every 4 pigs in the country. Crapping up our country, driving our economy down to put money into their bank in China because our policymakers say that's good for America. National Hog Farmer 2016. This is after Smithfield buys out, after Cargill, JBS, this concentration really hammered. Not that it hadn't been coming along, but look at this. Smithfield, this is in the National Hog Farmer. Clearly not a liberal rag. This is the trade journal that I get because I'm a member of the pork producers, even though I think they're screwing me every day. I'm still a member. Who is watching out for the independent producer? Smithfield is also solely owned by a Chinese firm. Smithfield and the other major packers, the other big 3, systematically broke cash hog prices to 14-year lows, while at the same time selling pork at higher prices. Just like I said, who's getting screwed? The farmer and the consumer in the name of efficiency that Ronald Reagan passed and Bill Clinton ensured the concentration of the dollars could go to further that type of globalization of multinational corporations. And the end result is, I'll tell you it's in every market, is that farmers get less and consumers pay more. This is 2016. This is in the chicken industry. You heard about this, right? You all know what the Georgia dock is? Georgia dock you know what the yellow sheet is for beef? What the USDA prints out a document that they consolidate supposedly to tell us what the market is on cut meats. The Georgia dock was the primary tool. It came out of the state of Georgia. Their Department of Ag consolidated the data on a regular basis, and then it would be posted on USDA's website, and it was used by wholesalers and retailers to determine the real price of a chicken, so they would buy it from one of these vertical integrators. You know, JBS is the 2nd or 3rd largest poultry folks down in mostly Southeast. There's Tyson, JBS, Puritan. So Georgia Dock was the primary tool to say this is the value of a chicken. Lo and behold, they found out that Georgia Department of Ag was just calling them up on the phone and asking them, what are your costs? And then just writing that down. So it came out that maybe it wasn't right because they started using a couple of other tools to determine what the real value of a chicken was, a broiler. And under two other systems, it looked like somebody was screwing them. So they called up Georgia, who had been producing this for USDA all these years, and they couldn't prove the numbers. New York Times ran this: how chickens are priced has become a contentious topic as the poultry industry has consolidated. You might be paying too much. Yeah, you were paying too much, about $1.10 or $1.20 a broiler. Too much, consumer. Poultry contract growers. Okay, that system, Mr. Tyson convinced Wall Street to back the first full vertically integrated business model where they would own the chicken. Remember, they had the 1920 court settlement where a processor packer couldn't own the animal all the way to the meat. Reagan took that away. Then we saw Mr. Tyson in really take advantage of that and began to put in place a true full vertically integrated model where Mr. Tyson owns the chicken all the way through, just like Mr. Smithfield, Mr. Cargill. We got contract growers. You can be a contract grower for pigs or poultry. All right. This is going on in America. At the same time, 71% of the family farmers who are contract poultry growers in this country have somewhere near $1 million borrowed to make Mr. Tyson's and JBS's systems work. Because see, they don't finance. That's how they finance their system. They put that burden on the farmer to own the production buildings, right? And to provide the labor and to dispose of the waste. 71% of those American family farmers with nearly $1 million borrowed to help advance the prosperity of multinational corporations live below the federal poverty level. In their community, there's but one person with a contract. Because like I told you, they broke this country up into regions based upon where their processing plant is. You can only haul a bird so far. And they're just owned by that company. Once they sign that contract, there's some turkey poultry growers in Pennsylvania right now. When Mr. Perdue decided to withdraw the GIPSA rules, they immediately got a notice from their integrator that they had to spend $30,000 a building or lose their contract for a new ventilation system that company wants. They didn't get even though their contract says they're supposed to, they didn't get a price increase or anything. They got to come up with $30,000 or they're out of the poultry business, and most of them can't afford to borrow another $30,000 because they already borrowed to the hilt, and it's going to bankrupt a bunch of them farmers in Pennsylvania, and nothing they can do about it. All the time they're ripping the consumer off about $1.10 or $1.20 a chicken. This is not farming. This is what's come about in Wisconsin. 600 fewer dairy farmers and cows living like this. I already showed you this picture, Mr. Smithfield. 290 million of these animals live like this. This is Yuma, Colorado, JBS's Five Rivers feed yard, the largest feed yard in the world on beef. 130,000 animals live here. I was with good friend Dr. Tom Parks, and Mike Callicrate is in a Vice documentary and flew over this with the reporter. Mike's a board member of OCM, but you go there, if the wind's wrong, you better have a kerchief around your face or a mask because you're going to be smelling a lot of dry cow poop. 130,000 animals. Now, what are we told when these big corporations come into town and try to build their systems? What's it supposed to do? It's supposed to increase. I get so tired of these county commissioners or whatever you all call them in this state. We're bringing about economic development. Here's a study. So Yates County said, we don't want these big mega dairies. St. Lawrence County could not wait for it. I'm excited. We're going to get rich. In the end, St. Lawrence, not so much. Fact is, counties that worked hard to keep them out actually saw real median household income go up. Now, this is for all the citizens, not just farmers. I'm talking about your rural communities. And the one that couldn't wait to have the big mega dairies and drive the small farmer off the land, actually it went down. Number of dairy farms decreased in St. Lawrence County by 77%. Those were family farmers. Those were family farmers. Folks just like you. Iowa. They can't wait to get more hogs and more chickens. Now, my good friend Chris Peterson, former president of the Iowa Farmers Union, board member of OCM, works every day to try to stop it. They're trying to get a moratorium going in Iowa to stop it. But here's, right after they opened up corporate agriculture and vertically integrated models, they discovered, whoops, maybe made a mistake, maybe it wasn't economic development. One 500-head hog operation has local spending of $33,550. This was 2 years after they opened it up. One 5,000-head hog operation spent locally $233,000. But they drove the other farmers off the land and put all those animals in those big buildings, and so they gave up the difference between $335,500 and $233,000. That was lost economic development for that community. It did not increase economic development. There is a short spurt, I agree. The numbers are clear. When they're building the buildings, you have economic increase, economic development. Once the buildings are built, then it goes the opposite way. And what does it do? Joe Logan, your all's counterpart up in Ohio, has been fighting this. Toxic algae blooms moving east into Lake Erie's Central Basin, unhealthy levels found in drinking water. People got sick, people died, people all because of the runoff and because these states lower the standards to allow these big megas to come in. You know, in America, you think you turn on your tap and drink clean drinking water, right? We think that only people in third world countries have non-potable water. Not so much in America anymore. Most people should be scared to test what their well water, if you're drinking well water out in the country, what it actually has in it. In Des Moines, Iowa, there's so much hog manure and chicken litter and stuff running into the water that the city of Des Moines had to spend $4 million to upgrade its water, not wastewater, its water treatment plant, and it's spending $1 million more a year to try to clean the water so they can have safe drinking water. The real enemy. How does this happen in America? Why would the policymakers do this? Well, the policymakers are doing this because we have voices at our capitals claiming they're the voice for America's family farmers. I could go on about a lot of them, but I don't have enough time today. I'm going to point to my buddies at NCBA. This is during the last Farm Bill debate, and get ready. I'm going to show you what they're getting ready to do to us again. We know we fought hard to try to make sure that country of origin labeling and GIPSA stayed in the last Farm Bill. Remember, they were trying to put a rider in or amendment in that did away with our 2008 Farm Bill language on GIPSA and country of origin labeling. And they lost. Stabenow cut a deal in the Senate, and those amendments stayed out, still giving us an opportunity to have enforcement on GIPSA rules and at least it didn't destroy country of origin labeling. This is the president of NCBA. This person, how many people sell cattle? Any of y'all cattle? They're mostly grain in here. Every time I sell a calf, I pay $1. It equals about $80 million a year. 80% of that goes to NCBA, of that checkoff money. And then they lobby against everything I want. This is what they said. We are finding a lot of support in the halls of Congress for repealing this if this is not fixed. That was GIPSA on this quote. So they wanted to repeal our 2008 GIPSA language. He said, there's a narrow window where this issue, mandatory country of origin labeling, and GIPSA language could both be addressed in this Farm Bill. He wasn't talking about putting it in the Farm Bill. It was already there, right? We've got it in 2008. He's talking about getting it out. And they need to take advantage of it because if they don't, we will literally use all our resources to kill this bill. That's NCBA said that. This is the Wichita Eagle. These are the groups that worked against our country of origin labeling. American Meat Institute, National Cattle Beef Association, National Chicken Council, National Pork Producers Council, National Turkey Federation, North American Meat Association, as well as big meat packers, lobbied to have the new Farm Bill change the country of origin labeling. All those checkoff dollars wind up working against us. Here's NCBA's 2018 Farm Bill priorities. It was nice to have my friend take a picture of this. Defend any attempts to restrict marketing programs, reinstate COOL, make changes to GIPSA, attempts to place a ban on packer ownership of cattle, and restrict the checkoff. That's in their priorities. Everything you want, NCBA is opposed to, and they get $80 million of tax money to lobby this, my tax money. There's $750 million in checkoffs in this country, the majority of which winds up in the hands of industrial agriculture that I told, literally when we have policymakers sitting at a table trying to negotiate the Farm Bill, they're staring at almost $750 million of farmers' money on the other side of that equation. Here's my message. One, we got to take a stand. We got another Farm Bill coming up. Now, in the 1920s, they won, right? And by the time I was just getting ready to go farm, it was as good as it had ever been in this country, 20% CR4. Fair, open, transparent markets for us in agriculture to thrive in. But we made up 30% of the population. Today, we are less than 1%. This is what I'll tell you. There's not anybody in this room who hasn't been fighting these issues most of their life. About half of us are getting a little old. I'm not going to call out any names. And there's no doubt we'll pull pistols, we'll pull sabers, and we'll charge this takeover of the food system. These folks that are denying us our way of life, that are destroying our rural communities, that are punishing the animals and punishing the workers in their slaughterhouses. We know that you in this room and I will fight. But I want to tell you, there ain't enough of us. There's less and less of us. Farmers, all of us, make up less than 1% of the population. And some of our cousins ain't the brightest bulbs, and they like to have someone blowing smoke up their rump to pump up their hats and their belt buckles so they feel big. So they're in bed with this stupidity. Well, that means there's even less of us who will go fight. I don't know if you know that old movie, The Last Samurai. Well, they charged, I'd just soon not be the last samurai. So I've got a little different plan for you today. We've got to reach outside of our farmhouses and reach out into the community. The eaters are with us. That's where our reserves are. We've got to be the point of the spear because America trusts America's family farmers, and we have to be the voice. But we need to ask them to step up and help us, and they're ready to do it. We need to understand, I I'm on the Humane Society United States Ag Council. And I get beat up all the time. And they, down in Oklahoma, when I was fighting that checkoff, and when I've been fighting these right to farms, or I'm in Wisconsin or wherever, they always use that. You know, I'm trying to end all animal agriculture. Well, hell, I ain't trying to end all animal agriculture. Now, if people want to buy, as my good friend Wes Schumeyer says, you know, farmers raise beans too, so I'm glad vegans at least eat. In Oklahoma, we sat down with the Sierra Club. You know, them crazy people trying to do away with us. You know, that's what industrial ag tells us. They're the devils, right? They're the reason we're going broke. And we talked to them. We talked to the animal welfare folks, and we talked to the good food movement folks, and together we won. But when we stood alone and tried to fight this, we lost. It was worth the fight, but we've got to reach outside our communities. Right behind that farm is a city full of people that want to help you. But you have to be willing to sit down with them and work it out. And it ain't always easy. But we've got to have help if we're going to win in this farm bill. Things, in my opinion, and I leave it up to the Farmers Union for theirs, they didn't have one of their folks here, but it looks worse to me today in the House than it did in the past. We've got a chance in the Senate. But we had better have friends. Sonny Perdue decided, he withdrew the GIPSA rules, you know. I'm probably about out of time here. Let me tell you a quick story. Did you know Sonny Perdue did away with the GIPSA rules that we fought, I don't know, 2 decades for? You know what his basis for doing it was? On OCM's webpage, you can find this. We have his recorded statement. He said that predatory, okay, so Packers Stockyard Act was termed, as Roger Johnson says, as the Farmers' Bill of Rights. It was because it gave farmers the right to be able to go to courts if there had been retaliatory or predatory practices in the market used against them individually as a farm. So it was the Farmers' Bill of Rights. The courts over time have said, no, you got to prove market harm. Well, the farmer can't ever do that. So these rules were going to restore that. Sonny Perdue said this. He said the retaliatory and predatory practices are moral actions for which I do not think nor believe litigation or regulation can resolve. He believes we all should just get along. Go listen to his statement. Get along with the bully in the marketplace. Ask those poultry growers in Pennsylvania how they're getting along, Mr. Perdue. Ask the 90% of the hog farmers no longer farming how they're getting along, Mr. Perdue. A group of folks showed up at Mr. Perdue's listening post the other day and described the problem on the farm of concentration. You know what his answer was? He said, you all should just go out and build a processing plant. Now, Mr. Perdue this week eliminated GIPSA. Did you know that? He eliminated the Grain Inspectors Packers Stockyard Administration this week. Moved it as a subgroup under AMS. AMS is the Agricultural Marketing Services Group that controls the checkoff funds. For 5 years, OCM, we've been in court for 3, are just trying to get the financial records of how the beef checkoff is being expended, and USDA will not release those. NCBA and USDA are working against us together in the courts. The dairy farmers, for 5 years, couldn't get any reports. The pork producers. Commodity checkoff programs have to be reformed. Beef checkoff forces cattlemen to pay for their own hanging rope. We We have 120 organizations with over 250,000 farmers represented that have signed on to the checkoff reform legislation. We believe they have to be transparent. They shouldn't be used to disparage in the marketplace. The other white meat campaign, my pork is not white. I have heritage breeds. They spent all that money on that program trying to convince Americans that pork should be white. You know why? Because they wanted to breed those animals so they'd fit, 30,000 of them a day through one of those slaughterhouses, so they had to breed them like rails. They bred all the mother instincts. That's why they've got to cage them, bred that out of them, and the darn meat turned white. Then they had to go spend my pork checkoff money to convince people it was okay that pork was white. Pork's not supposed, that's nasty. If that darn loin's just plumb white, don't buy it. It's shoe leather. I don't care how good a cook you are. You got to pump that thing through with so much stuff just to keep it tender. And they spent my checkoff money. My checkoff money developed that campaign, Pork the Other White Meat, my checkoff money. They gave that to National Pork Producers Council. National Pork Producers Council for almost 2 decades made money off of that logo. And when they were ready to retire to create this new thing called Pork Be Inspired, my checkoff board paid them $60 million for the retired logo, Pork the Other White Meat. I had to pay for that darn thing twice. Now, I know we've got folks here that support and sit on some of these boards. I'm telling you, take a look at these bills. Money should not wind up in the pockets of any organization that lobbies the Congress. You cannot build a strong enough firewall. If you lobby, you should not be a contractor of the checkoff funds. It's tax money, government tax money that should not be used. It is not your money. The Supreme Court determined it to be government money, tax money. And it's picking winners and losers in the marketplace. And it's being used by industrial agriculture to lobby against the very things this organization is for. The other thing we're working on at OCM is to restore and do away with the efficiency rule. We've got some great opportunity. We've got both Democrats and Republicans. On the checkoff bills, we've got Senator Booker and then Senator, who is probably one of the more progressive in the U.S. Senate, out of New Jersey, and we've got Senator Lee and Senator Paul. So we have a great team to actually reform those checkoff bills. We've got Senator Grassley and Senator Warren looking at restoring justice in these on these issues of restoring and taking away efficiency rule. So we ask you to stand for what is right, even that it means standing alone. As Tom showed you earlier, that oak tree standing there for National Farmers Union means that's who you are. Reach out to your neighbors in the city, ask them for help, be willing to sit down with them. They're not against you, they're for you, as we say around home. Thank you very much. God bless all of you.